Happy Christmas, everyone. Hope you're having a good time. Thank you to Keung for hosting this Christmas party. Hope you're not getting too drunk and you're enjoying yourselves. This is my little contribution to it. What shall we be making today? Well, we've got a little bit of fabric, so it's going to be a sewn project. I shall reveal, and you'll probably guess straight away what it is. Ooh, what does that remind you of? A nice Christmas stocking. The first thing I did was make myself a little template. I drew it round several times until I got a shape that I was pleased with. It's quite chunky, but of course you want to be able to get things in rather than just a slim one. There we go. And the reason I made a template is I need several pieces that are the same size. So it's easier to have a template, then I can just draw around it or run my rotary cutter around, and if I want to make more than one, we're good to go. I shall show you the constituent parts. It's a quick and easy project, hopefully with a little bit of touches that give it a bit of class, and all you really need is a straight stitch, and that's all there is to it. We may put a fancy stitch around some bits, but we'll come to that. So the parts we need are... The first thing we need is a front and a back. I've chosen this red fabric that's got a sort of a faux patchwork design on it. It's nice and florally, so it's not going to, if you're not really into Christmas, it's still a very nice Christmas stocking, but not overly Christmassy fabric. We need a front and a back, so what you need to do is cut one facing one way and one facing the other, and the easiest way to do that is to use your template, put your fabric, fold it either in or out so that the good sides or the bad sides are together, whichever way, it doesn't really matter, and then you put your template on, draw or cut all the way around it, and then you're guaranteed having a left and a right. You'd be surprised how easy it is to end up with two fronts or two backs. But if you just fold the fabric over before you cut it, you can't go wrong. With the faux patchwork fabric, it's quite thin. It's only a quilting weight cotton. So what I'm going to do is put some, what we call bump, but it's sort of curtain interlining, interfacing, or just some thin wadding or batting. And we're going to put that on the back. Well, you decide obviously whether you want to hang it from that side or that side. I think we'll go for that side. So this will be my front. So the very first job is to sew my front fabric to the interfacing. So I'll just go off and do that, and I'll be back in a jiffy. Welcome back. That didn't take long, did it? Let me show you what I've done. You can see that I've sewn along the patches. You'll see it better on the other side. I've sewn around the patchwork pieces to give it a sort of, really does look patchwork now, as if I've really constructed that from several lots of pieces, whereas I've taken the cheats way out and used faux patchwork fabric. But what I've done is I sewed crossways and then up to down, but you'll see that the thread, I just used one continuous stitch, so I sewed to an end, looped it around and came back across, looped around. So now we just need to trim all those excess bits off. So we'll just snip, snip, throw them on the floor as in a Miss P manner. I think she thinks we've got a cleaning lady. I mean, you could leave these, it's just they're very prone to getting caught up under your needle and messing things up, so it's just easy to tidy as you go. coming together already. I mean, you can't mistake it as being anything other than a stocking, I would hope. Whilst I was only gone in a matter of seconds, it took me quite a while because I'm not the fastest sewer in the world. Slow and steady, gets there in the end. It'll be ready for Easter. I think that's them all done. So there we go. Zigzag across the back, and you can see I've deliberately tried not to get it exactly on, so it looks slightly more handmade. Right, now the next part of the stocking that we need to introduce, again I've got my template, is you'll see that I've put a heel and a toe on it, which I think raises it up a level. And what I've done there is cut out some red fabric to size off my template. There we go. And you'll see that there's a solid line and a dotted line. That's because we're using cotton fabric and it's liable to fray. So what I've done is I've just done a 1/4 inch allowance and pressed it over so that when we sew that on, it now comes to the solid line. And the same with the red, just pressed in over 1/4 inch so that when I sew it down, it comes out at the right size, but we don't have an edge that frays. It doesn't matter about the outside because that's all going to get sewn in when the two pieces come together. So that's the next job, is to sew those two onto the front piece so that they look something like that. So I'll pause you again there and I'll be back as soon as I've done my sewing. Here we go, back again. There we go. That's the toe and the heel, and you'll see that I've just sewn around that folded edge. This outside edge is going to get caught in when we sew it all together. I'll put a blanket stitch around so that it adds an extra little touch, because we're all about the class today. There we go. So the next step that we need to do, well, first of all, I'll just turn it over and show you that sometimes you get a little bit of the red that comes over the top, and again on the heel there's just a little bit left over where the allowance, 1/4 inch allowance, was folded over. So I'll just trim them off, just again so to make it easier when we come to sew them together, so there's not anything getting caught up. So it's easy enough to do. Just get your scissors, trim it off, just to make it nice and neat and round, and you'll just find it much easier to sew them together if everything's the same size. Get rid of those bits. So the very next job we need to do is we need to put the front and the back together. You'll notice I've only put interfacing on the front because it's enough body. If you put it on the back, you'd end up with a very thick seam and it would be unnecessarily thick. Whereas now you'll see, well, you can't really see because I'm hanging it down, but if you hang it down, it retains its shape. So when it's hanging up on the fireplace or wherever you hang it, it's going to keep that nice stocking shape as opposed to just droop and hang and look sad, because you don't want a sad stocking. So to put the two halves together, you want to put the two halves, the two good sides together, and then we're going to sew around the outside. So you want to make sure they're nicely lined up across the top, around the side, the heels, the toes, and then we're going to sew all the way around, and then when we're finished it will turn it inside out. So the good sides will be on the outside and the seam will be on the inside where you can't see it. You could use some quilting clips to keep them together or pin them if you wanted. I'm just going to go for it because it's not my first rodeo. So I'll be back in a second when I've sewed them two bits together. Here we are back in. That's those two sewn together. As you can see, I call them the good side, but the right sides are in on the inside. But the first thing we need to do before we turn it in to out is because we've got curves, there's some kind of tight spots when it goes round. So what I'm going to do is just take some scissors and just trim off some of the excess between the edge of the stocking and where the stitching starts, just to give it a bit more, less to get round the bend. So I'm going to take my scissors. You can see where the stitching starts, so you know where the toe is. And I'm just literally going to take the scissors and just cut between the edge, close to the stitching without cutting the stitching. And it's just when you do fold it into out and press it, it'll look so much neater because it won't have all this bulk that's trying to stretch itself and squeeze itself into a narrower gap. I'll just stop folding at this point because cutting and talking is about one thing too many for me to manage.
How's it going, Mr. F?
It's going very well, thank you, Miss P.
Seem to be managing very well.
It's coming out stocking shaped, which is pretty much all I could hope for.
It's looking lovely.
There's all these people tuning in to see Mr. F's stocking.
I know, it's a party.
I know, it's a party. Jen will probably have the gin on the go. There we go, so I've just eased off some of that thickness around where the heel and toe is. So the next job is to turn it inside out and then give it a quick press. So I'll turn it inside out and then I'll pause you again while I go off and heat the iron up. There we go, look at that. Get your hand inside the stocking. Sounds like a good Christmas party when people are doing that. And there we go, and hopefully you can now see that this is really taking shape. It's got a nice bit of weight to it. You see, look, when you hang it up, the toe doesn't drop down because of that interfacing that we put in. And there we go. But you can just see that it's kind of lumpy, shall we say, around the heel and toe and along the seams, and that's just because they haven't been pressed yet. So I'll just go and heat the iron up, press that and get back to you in a second. Don't go far. There we go, that's that nicely ironed now. As you can see, the edges, look at those neat edges. Oh, I'm so proud of it. So that's nicely pressed now, and then on the inside you'll see that we have the interfacing and the wrong side of the back. And of course we wouldn't want to leave it like that. So the next thing we need to do is put a lining inside. So what I've got there is I've got some just plain cotton sheeting, 2 pieces, and I got my template and I put it on there and drew around it. This is the beauty of the template, is everything comes out the right size. I'll just quickly show you those as well. I also made a template for the heel and toes, so that should I wish to make any more, I've got them ready for the off. Just makes life easier if you're making more than one. So on this, what I'm going to do is, because it's going inside the stocking, it needs to be slightly smaller. Not massively so, but just to make it nice fit rather than it being bulky. So what I'm going to do is to start at one end and sew using the black line of the edge of my sewing foot. So there'll be a row of stitching that comes inside evenly all the way around out the top. Obviously you don't sew across the top because you wouldn't get anything in. And also, what I'll also do is the normal practice is when you start stitching, go forward and back and then forward again, and it'll lock all those stitches in, because if anybody's sticking anything of any size inside the stocking, they're the sort of points that's going to take the strain. So we're just doubling up on the stitching at the front and the end. So yeah, we're going to sew inside there, and I'll show you that as soon as I've done it. Be right back. There we go, that sews back. There you can see, ooh, let me show you. I've sewn, used the edge of the presser foot and use that as a guide and just sewn inside. So the next thing we need to do is to cut that out, and we'll have our lining for the stocking. It's all going so swimmingly well. Right, let me get some big scissors for this. First thing I'm going to do is cut on the straight line. This is the one time that I'm going to use that black line for cutting. Just move that out there just in case we have any accidents. It wouldn't be the first time. Obviously you could use your rotary cutter and a ruler for this, but it's only straight across the top, it's not. There we go, that can go in the bin. And now what we're going to do is go round, but what we're going to do is cut between the stitching and the black line and get rid of the excess bulk. So just going to follow it down off the screen there. But I do need to see, of course, that's an important part of it, being able to see what you're doing. Which actually, when you're making videos, as I'm sure Kyung and Miss P will testify, sometimes you have to move off camera because you just can't work out the right angle without getting your head in the way. Doesn't matter where exactly you are between the black line and the stitching, just as long as you don't cut the stitching. I'm just pulling a bit towards me just so, because it makes it easier, because otherwise I won't see where I'm cutting. We've done the edges of this stocking so they're not exactly straight, because it just gives it a bit more life if there's a bit of a sweep to the curves, etc. So there we go. So the next thing we need to do is we just open that up, make sure it's nice and, oh yeah, nice lining. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pop it inside our first part that we did, the front and the back and the heel and the toe. So we're going to open that up, put that in, feed it down around the corner into the toe, and it should fit nicely. And then you can spread your fingers in there, run your fingers around the seam to flatten it out. Again, run your fingers around that side, and then the lining should be, he says, nicely aligned. There we go. So that's now the main body of the stocking completed. The lining just sits inside and it's going to get sewn at the top. So the next phase that we need to do is, we don't need to give the lining a press. The next thing we need to do is get our template back, and you'll see that I've drawn a line across there, because what we're going to do is put a top on our stocking, give it even more class. Now the fabric that I've chosen for that is, I've got some, this is just cotton fabric. It's more sort of cushion weight, but it's got a nice sort of Christmassy look to it, and that'll go around like that and tuck inside, and that will kind of be the finished look. But the first thing I need to do, and also when we're doing that, we need the what we're going to use as a loop for hanging it. In this case, I've got a piece of satiny red ribbon. You could use string, cord, whatever you want. It's just to give it a nice strong thing that you can hang it up, particularly when it's been filled, if anybody's going to fill it for you. So we'll go away and I'll sew together the top and show you what it looks like once I've sewn it, because we need to form, basically we need to form a loop like that, and that's going to get sewn into the top and hide all the seams on the inside. So I'll get back to you in a second. The one thing I'll show you just before I go, it's just occurred to me again, is if you place your stocking on the template, you'll see that we've now sort of come in the side of the template, because of course we've created all them seams on the inside and we've kind of lost that fabric. So bear in mind when you're making your template that the stocking is always going to come out slightly shorter by the size that you've made the seam, which in this case is about 1/4 of an inch. So it's just worth bearing in mind, if you want a specific size to fit something in, make the template to suit. So I'll just go and away and sew up the top, and I'll be back to you soon. So there we go. So what I've done is I've taken a piece of fabric that I made twice the width that I wanted the top, so that it looks, even if you see, there'll be no raw edge. Basically that edge will go on that, the folded edge will be at the bottom, and all the seamed edge will be hidden inside. So what I need to do now is to just take that, give it an iron, and where I've made the seam, I just need to iron that flat as you would if you were quilting, just to make it lie flat. If you don't make it lie flat, when you come to sew it, it gets caught up in your foot, etc. So I'll just go back over and sew, iron that, and I'll be right back. So there we go. I've pressed that seam nice and flat, and so the next thing we need to do is to turn it half out, half over, so that the two edges are the same, which is easier said than done when you're on camera. There we go, we're getting there, we're getting there, we're getting there. There we go. Same way as you'd make a cuff, I suppose, if you were doing a shirt. There we go. So what I'm going to do now is go and press that nice and flat, and then we can get about attaching that to the rest of the stocking. Be right back. So there we go. I've now sewn that down, fold that, pressed it nicely, and there we are. That's ready for attaching. What I should mention at this point, what you need to do to make that is, if you wait till your stocking's made, measure across there, you want twice that size plus 1/4 of an inch each side, an extra 1/2 inch, to allow for the seam allowance on the inside. You need to do it once you've made your stocking, because if you made it to the size, as we pointed out before, of the template, the stocking gets smaller because of the seam allowances. So that's that ready for attaching later. What I should do is, where I've got the seam, I shall fold it and mark it and just pop a pin in exactly on the other side, so that when I'm sewing it around on the inside to attach it, I'll know that that should be on the opposite side, so I'll know that I've not been stretching or pulling. So I'll just pop a pin on there. You could make a little mark with a pen or whatever, friction, because then you could remove it afterwards. But I'll just pop a pin in, and then when I come to sew it, I'll know that I'm halfway round. There we go. Just as a little marker, just so when I come to sew, I know I'm on track. The next thing I need to attach, first, that makes it slightly easier if you do it now, is the loop. So I've got me a nice piece of ribbon. I'm going to make a nice big loop. And where I need to put that is on this side, so it's hanging with the toe hanging down. So I need to line up my lining and my seams on the inside, make sure they're nice and square and it's all lined up. And then what I'm going to do is put the two ends together, drop it down inside, and it needs attaching on that point there. So I'm just going to run a little bit of stitching across there to hold it in place, just to make life easier so I'm not fighting 4 different things. So I'll be back in a second. Here we go. There you can see that I've sewn that loop in, piece of ribbon, and you'll see that I've sewn several times over, because obviously that's kind of the load bearing point of it, so it needs to be well attached. The next thing we need to do is get our top. You'll see the keen-eyed amongst you that I've put the pin along the seam side that I'm going to be seaming. I put it in the top, which is pointless. So I've moved it over to the correct side so that when I do come to sew it, I can use that as a guide. The next thing we do is we put this inside the stocking, and the sewn seam is going to go to the back where the hanging loop is, and that just goes inside until we get it. All the points, you see the point there is going to go to the front, and that's there. So the next job to do is we now need to go around and sew all the way around, getting all them layers level and caught in. This is probably the most difficult bit, but it's not insurmountable. You just need to make sure it's all round, because of course your sewing foot's coming up and down here, so you need to be able to move this out of the way and kind of rotate and pull it back as you go round. For the more accomplished sewer it's quite easy, but it's not the hardest thing in the world, but you do need to take care. So I'll just go and do that, and I'll be back with you soon. Well, there we go. That's all that sewn all the way around. Gone all the way around. Now obviously if you are a little bit nervous about that, what you could do is obviously use your quilting clips, clip it all the way around and keep it all the three layers, 4 layers together, or you could obviously use your quilting pins and pin them all so it stays level. Once you get used to it, you'll find that you can just whiz round relatively quickly, which has got some threads there where we finished off, so we'll just trim them off. Then what we need to do is pull the top out, and this is where you find out if you put everything in the right order, and then fold it back down on itself, but don't fold it right to this edge. If you go up a bit and then fold it sort of there, you end up with a nicer finish, and it ends up with a nicer length on the stocking. So we'll just do that. We'll just turn it over. I'll put it roughly in place. Might be a bit too much. A bit more down there maybe. There we go. I think that's. I'll straighten that up when I come to press it a little. I think we're a bit skew whiff on one end. There we go. That's better. That's better. That's lined up with the stitching better. And there we go. So I'll just take that away, give it a final press. Got somewhere in here is going to be the loop, hopefully. Ooh, there we are. So that's the hanging loop. So that's going to hang up nicely. Because we put the interfacing in, it's got a nice bit of weight and thickness to it, so it doesn't distort when you hang it upside down. It's going to keep that nice stocking shape. So I'll just go and press that, line everything up, and then we're getting there, and we'll have a quick discussion of some alternative things that you could do, some embellishments you could make on it, but that's your quick and easy stocking. I'll be back in a second once I've given it a quick press. There we go then, that's given it its final press. I'll put it that way on. There we go. That is our quick and easy, but with class, Christmas stocking. Obviously some alternative things you could do. Obviously you could use some maybe fleece at the top, some white fleece would look very Christmassy. You could use some felt for the heels and toes, or felt at the top. The beauty of felt, of course, is it doesn't fray, so you wouldn't have to worry about turning in any edges. You could, if you've got an embroidery machine, you could put a name on top, or if you've got some Tim Holtz alphabet dies, you could cut some felt letters out and spell the name across the top. You could put Merry Christmas if you wanted it more generic. You could write with a fabric pen, put a name on, or you could embellish the front before you assemble it. You could applique a snowman on the front, or anything you like. You could attach some bells, but go to town with it. I would say that once you get used to it, probably you could do the entire thing in an hour or two, though don't rush and enjoy the experience. Well, I hope you enjoy that. I've now got something for my Christmas presents to go in, if I wasn't on the naughty list, of course. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of the Christmas party. Thanks again to Keong for hosting it, and have a Merry Christmas and a great New Year. And I hope that all you on the nice list get what you deserve for Christmas, and all of us on the naughty list, hey, we had a good year, we can let Christmas slide. So I'll see you again soon. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.